Okay, so after a far too long delay, the Marvel Netflix catch-up is back. We're picking up with episode 5 of The Defenders, Take Shelter. Basically, as this is happening, it picks up from where the last episode ended with the the two factions squaring off in the Chinese restaurant. The other fingers of the hand begin to show up. As this is they get into a fight with, I guess you could call them the Defenders at this point. Alexander kind of quietly slips away from the chaos. In the midst of the fight, Gauss points out that they need to take the Iron Fist alive. Matt basically manages to distract Elektra long enough that he begins trying to reason with her, talk her down. He mentions her name, and it's enough to kind of get her to freeze and wind up attacking Murakami from one of the fingers of the hand. It's this point that Suwando drives a van into Luke Cage and basically starts driving away with him. Everyone else kind of falls back to regroup a little bit. They go back to the Chikara dojo. As they're sort of healing up, Luke arrives and he was able to overpower the van and overpower Suwando and tie him up. They begin interrogating him. Actually, as they tie him up, the opening credits happen, and I gotta really poo-poo Marvel on this one. Like, okay, wasn't entirely surprised that a certain character would be coming back. I mean, he was mentioned earlier, but if you want it to be a surprise reveal, don't put the actor who plays said character's name in the opening credits. Oh, God, that was stupid. Anyway, the group tries to interrogate Suwando, but he's basically said, look, they can't, you got me, but they'll go after, if they can't find you, they'll go after everyone you love. And it's at this point, basically, Luke stops off to pick up Claire Temple. Let's see, Danny... this is, as he's picking up Claire, Danny spots something, he goes off in pursuit. And as he's following it, it's then that Bakudo reveals himself to be alive, and he starts trying to talk to Colleen and tries to get her to rejoin the hand. It's at this point Luke and Danny show up, and Bakudo basically says something about Danny's destiny being greater than Kunlun and runs off. It's at this point Matt goes to visit Karen Page. Luke goes to visit Misty Knight. Jessica tries to pick up Trish. Basically, they're bringing all of their close-knit friends and family to the police precinct with Misty's police precinct for protection. The hand intercepts Jessica as she tries to pick up Trish, with Murakami being the one to confront them. But then Matt shows up in his Daredevil outfit and manages to beat back Murakami enough. And the rest of the fingers of the hand begin to group together, and because Murakami spotted Daredevil, and so now they're actually more worried than they were before. And Gao takes Bakudo to task for basically trying to talk to Colleen and not going after Danny Rand, which is what he was supposed to do. Let me just check something here. Okay, yeah. And you can start to see the cracks beginning to happen. As this is also happening, Daredevil is interrogating Sawandi about Elektra. Sawandi basically, Matt basically takes his billy club and he separates it and ties the cable around Sawandi's throat. Basically, he winds up choking him till the pass out because Sawandi doesn't talk. It's at this point that Matt finally explains what his history with Elektra is. As everyone's beginning to argue as to whether or not they need to kill Elektra, Sawandi starts to slip out and get away, but then Stick immediately chops Sawandi's head off. As this is happening, Elektra has actually slipped out of her cell at the Hand headquarters. She's sort of exploring on her own. She actually goes to Matt's apartment, finds some of his Daredevil paraphernalia, and then lies down on the bed. And that leads into episode 6, Ashes, Ashes. It's then that Stick begins to piece together, again, Iron Fist is kind of the key to this whole thing. It might be to open some sort of door. Danny thinks it's to Kunlun, but he refuses to sit out the fight. As I should point out, before he died, Suwandi did take Danny hostage and say, "I have the key now. I have the key." So this is where Stick is piecing together how important Danny is. But Danny refuses to sit out the fight. He tries to fight back against Matt and Luke. Danny eventually punches Luke with the Iron Fist and tosses everyone back. And as Danny starts to get up and try to recharge his key, Jessica drills Danny with I think it was a lead pipe or something, knocks him unconscious. Okay. It's at this point, Matt begins to describe what he and Elektra saw at the Hand headquarters at the tail end of season 2 of Daredevil, which was this. They were digging kind of a large hole into the earth, and again, that's obviously what the Hand was going after. Matt and Jessica kind of leave to go investigate that. They interrogate the. Though they don't interrogate. They question the daughter of the architect who designed the new building for the Hand headquarters, and she eventually they managed to turn up the plans, which reveal this large kind of tunnel going under it, but it stops at some point. They don't know exactly what it is. At this point, they actually return to Matt's apartment, and they find evidence that Elektra had been there, but she has left at this point. Stick, meanwhile, has mailed Suwandi's head back to the Hand, and this is causing even more cracks to begin to happen. Like, basically, the other fingers begin to turn on Alexandra. They said, okay, you may have resuscitated Elektra a little too early. It turns out what they're trying to get to is the blood of Shaolin, the dragon that Danny fought to become the Iron Fist. And Danny himself even says he plunged his hand into Shaolin's heart, or Shaolu's heart, and exactly, that was how he was imbued with the power of the Iron Fist. And like I said, they're trying to get them, because they've basically run out of what they've had to resurrect people. They can't, so if they die, it's permanent, which is what has happened to Suwandi now, and basically, the last of the, for lack of a better term, resurrection juice was used on Elektra. And they said this might have been a bit of a waste. We might have jumped the gun on this. As this is happening, Danny kind of comes to as he's trying to recharge his key and break free again. He does sort of bond with Luke a little bit more. And Alexandra, let's see. Like I said, this is how you piece together what it is the Hand is after. And, okay, sorry. Alexandra does kind of try to assuage everyone's fears. In fact, she manages to track down Elektra, shows Elektra's grave, thinks that, again, that Elektra's personality has been removed and it's the black sky. And as this is happening, back with the Defenders, Sick has kind of come to the realization again that really the only way to prevent this would be to try to kill Danny Rand. He's meditating with some incense, and this is basically incense that can knock out Luke. Matt and Jessica arrive. At the same time, Elektra then shows up as well. Elektra fights Stick, eventually kills Stick just as Matt tries to enter the fray. She takes out the others pretty quickly, grabs Danny, and leaves. She then brings him back to Alexandra at the Hand headquarters. Alexandra explains that Danny is literally the key for the Five Fingers of the Hand to return to Kunlun, and that Danny saw what he wanted to saw when he saw Kunlun's destruction. It's basically hidden. That's all you need to know. He's wheeled off in basically a holding chair. And it's right then that Elektra stabs Alexandra through the heart and then chops off her head. and then asserts her control and that she is Electra Nachios at this point. She is not the Black Sky. She's not that. She's in full control of her faculties.
If you're looking for adventure this summer, escape with Marvel Comics. Fight crime with Spider-Man, meet the Fantastic Four, and watch Captain America in action. May the Force be with you as you battle the evil empire in Star Wars. Discover the secrets of the South American jungle in Raiders of the Lost Ark. And with Marvel Comics, you're never alone because they can go with you in the car or to the park, even on a rainy day. Marvel Comics are your ticket to fun and adventure this summer.
No need to panic. Could be critical. The odds are against you. Spider-Man faces 20 supervillains so powerful even with the Fantastic Four. His number may be up. Marvel Spider-Man, the video game from Acclaim.
Thursday on LA Law, Victor's dentist has more than his bite in mind.
I want to do something very special for you tonight.
Then,
we, the jury, sentence the defendant to death.
Thank you, God, lady! Thank you, deadly!
a killer's revenge could mean Grace's life. Thursday on LA Law.
Okay, moving on to episode 5 of The Punisher, Gunner. Micro takes task. We open up with Micro taking Frank to task for what happened at the end of episode 4 with Madani and saving her life. You know, it's possible she could have seen him, but Frank doesn't say there isn't really that she's a good agent. She's not on the side of injustice or anything. She's not corrupt, so she shouldn't be killed. And he's certain that she didn't spot him. Of course, it turns out she did spot him, and she's in a lot of trouble. Going back to her briefly, you see her getting out of bed. Her body is wrapped up because she's got broken ribs and everything, which is kind of funny when we were later in the episode. But she's kind of in trouble with Homeland Security because she just lost a large cache of weapons. She's certain that Frank Castle is still alive, but no one's really believing her on this. She does go to talk with Karen Page and talks a bit about, again, more about Frank Castle, again, believing him to be alive. Going back to Frank and Micro, it's then that Micro basically turns the conversation around a little bit and asks how it is that someone shot the footage of Frank killing Madani's partner and sent it out. And Frank basically comes to the conclusion that it was one guy. It was a guy named Gunnar Henderson. Gunnar Henderson. It's also a guy that Madani is interested in, and it turns out that there's someone spying on Madani as well, who's bugged her office. And they're all basically looking for Gunnar Henderson, who is basically living off the grid. He's living off the land. He's completely isolated himself from everyone. Anyway, Frank and Micro basically managed to track down Gunnar's location, which is in Kentucky. They go down there, and after a brief encounter, which Gunnar accidentally shoots Frank with an arrow, Gunnar basically explains that he discovered there was a heroin smuggling operation being done by some CIA higher-ups, that was actually what Project Cerebus was. They were taking the bodies of deceased American soldiers and using them as drug mules, basically. And as this is happening, CIA forces start to show up, and they begin clashing with Gunnar and Frank. Both men get wounded. Gunnar eventually dies. And Micro, who is sort of watching this all in a drone, has to wait until nightfall to make off with Frank's body. Frank and Gunnar did manage to take everyone out, but yeah, Gunnar eventually dies from his wounds. And as this is happening, we get back to Madani, and she's hooking up romantically with Billy Russo, and what had to be some very, very painful sex, because you see her, like, her body is she still has basically a wrap across her breasts. You can clearly tell she has broken ribs, and yet they're having her engaging in sexual activity, which I don't think would be advised by any physician. Anyway, Okay, sorry. This moves on to our 6th episode, The Judas Goat. Frank still needs some medical attention, and that leaves Micro to have to seek help from Curtis. Curtis arrives, patches Frank up as he recovers. Frank's still kind of out of it. After their night together, Billy Russo and Madani... Billy Russo finds Madani's file in Frank Castle. He does point out that they never found a body on Frank. And around this time, Frank actually starts getting contact from Billy Russo, who's talking in a code that only the two of them would know. Micro is worried that Russo is looking for Frank, but Frank basically says Russo's on the up and up, he shouldn't be a worry. Madani gets news about Gunnar Henderson being dead. They found his body. And they sort of investigate in Kentucky, and they find out he wasn't alone, and DNA testing proves that Frank Castle was at the scene. Madani takes the evidence to Russo, again, hoping that he can use Castle to... she can use him to get Castle. She wants to bring him in for help on the Kandahar case if she can. Bring Frank Castle in for help on the Kandahar case if she can. Russo sort of visits Curtis, who plays kind of a plausible deniability. Again, Russo starts giving out the radio calls, and you think like, oh, okay, so the first radio call was after Madani and Russo talked, but that's not entirely the case. Eventually, though, Frank and Russo do meet up. Russo explains about Madani. Frank explains of the drug smuggling in Kandahar, and the guy behind it was just codenamed Agent Orange, but they didn't know who he is exactly. At this point, Russo offers Frank a new identity and a position with Anvil to start anew. Like, look, the world thinks you're dead. Let the world think you're dead. Just, live as a new person. Frank says he'll think about it, but he doesn't show up for a new mission. And it's then that Russo gets in the car, and it turns out he is working with the deputy director of the CIA, whose last name is Rawlins, and who is also, basically he's behind everything. He's behind the drug smuggling and what happened with Henderson and all of that stuff. So Russo's been in on this the whole time. First off, yes, I know Billy Russo goes on to be Jigsaw, a longtime villain from the Punisher comics, so we don't need to touch on that. Rollins, back in episode 5 with the forces that he sent to take down Henderson and Frank Castle had body camera on him, so he knows Frank's alive, and they're all trying to get Frank. They're all basically now. Everyone's got a finger in the pot, basically, for lack of a better term. So overall, with the episodes we've covered, I know I've been a little scattershot in this. I'm kind of trying to get back into the swing of things here. Sorry, but overall, my thoughts. All 4 of these were kind of dull. Just not much happened. Like when the action was happening, and it seems like things were actually starting to move along, it felt better. But there were a lot of plot cul-de-sacs and people standing around and talking and 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 standing around and talking. And it just kind of, like I said, it really started to fizzle out. And it's not just Defenders, like Punisher too, unfortunately. Again, I think that's because Punisher, this is a Season 2 story that for some reason they're doing in Season 1. Like, I really, really wish Season 1 was just Frank going after the Mafia. And then maybe that's how he comes to Micro's attention, and then we set the stage for Season 2 towards the end. But no, this just... Again, like, Frank Castle going after government conspiracies does not interest me. It's just not. Like I said, I hope things start to pick up soon here. Well, as... you'll probably guess by the next video. Yeah, basically, I finished off Defenders, so yeah, that'll be the next part of the video. And I've watched the next 2 episodes of The Punisher. Like I said, that'll be in the next video, which I will be shooting on the same day. So, see you all next time. Hey guys, is there a movie you want me to tackle? If it's some stinker like Baywatch or the Emoji Movie or something else, check out my Patreon at Sleepy Time for Cat Productions. See how you can make that happen.